Jeff Reichman, born and raised in Keokuk. Graduated from high school there, attended SEC throughout the various campuses throughout Lee County here. Graduated from there, attended Iowa Westland, graduated with my business administration degree. And at that point, I'd already kind of the delayed entry program in the Marine Corps and completed my OCS during 92. And then came back, completed my last semester, senior year of college, and left soon thereafter for active duty Marine Corps. I did my first 4 years and then came out off active duty, worked in the private sector for General Electric for about 7 years. And that actually allowed me to transfer back here to Burlington, so back to Southeast Iowa. And then in 2004, did my first combat tour in Iraq, and then came back, went to work for, at that time, the family business, Heartland Harley-Davidson in Burlington, Iowa, as the general manager there. Great opportunity, a passion of mine. I've been on two wheels since I was 6 years old, so really love that. And then had the opportunity to go back on active duty in 2007 and did 6 more years of active duty time. Achieved the rank of lieutenant colonel and did my second combat tour in 2011. And then my active duty time ended in 2013 and I came back to Lee County. So the second part of that question, why did I decide to run? It kind of started there, rolling my last 5 years of experience up. I can trace it back to that. Came back here, like I said, having worked for a Fortune 500 company, degree in business administration, platoon commander, infantry platoon commander, combat zone experience, company commander twice, deputy director of operations. I came back here and really thought I'd set myself up for success, and came back to being unemployed for 6 months and living in my parents' spare bedroom. I've not the proudest moment in my life, and I've relayed this experience several times, but definitely not the proudest moment in my life, and was a very tough and challenging time. So I'd visited, and my family's still here in Southeast Iowa. I visited several times and could see the area going downhill as plants were closing up and people were leaving the area, and just really unhappy and saddened by the state that Lee County was in at that time. Some of the businesses I used to frequent were closed down, and empty storefronts and rundown buildings. And I remember a building that just fell down in Keokuk and just collapsed and just was so dilapidated. So in the Marine Corps, we're always taught if you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. So I immediately got involved in economic development board in Keokuk, and then that tied me in with the Lee County Economic Development Board. So got involved with that, and hoping that you could help out in some way, do something to get the wheels rolling, to get something going in Lee County. Stayed active in or abreast of the politics, I guess. Not active, but abreast of, and then helped out with the caucus in 2 years ago. And when I did that, I had said, this might be something I'm interested in someday, and then found out. At that time, we had a discussion that, we're going, if you're going to do that, you might want to try this first, try county supervisor, try some other, just kind of groom you for it. And then a week later, Jerry Kearns had announced his retirement, and it set things in motion very quickly.
Yeah. How would you say your military and combat experience has shaped your worldview? Does that play into your politics at all? I know obviously this is a local office, but I imagine, right. You've been through a lot and seen a lot. Has that shaped your campaign at all?
Certainly has. we say that there's no ex-Marines, there's former Marines, and I still am active in the reserves, but you know, that experience never leaves your system. So of course it shapes, I guess, my views and my life experiences, and has given me a lot of experiences and a very diverse background, I think, that would set me up well for this office. I've worked at the state, federal level with incident response and training, worked with foreign nations, so certainly developed the ability to work at all levels and with different countries even, like I said, 4 times in Korea, in the Philippines last year. So just a very, like I said, diverse background to pull from.
So if you're elected, have you given much thought yet to what kind of committees might interest you up at the Capitol and some of the top issues you'd like to work on?
I've talked about the VA is one of the committees, and we have the past 20 years we haven't drafted anybody. It's been all volunteer force, so they're getting a lot more out from a lot less people. So multiple tours. I did 2 combat tours. I've had friends who've done 3, 4, 5 tours, and so it's really taken a lot more, from a smaller group. So the other thing that's going to present is it's going to be that smaller group has been more affected because it's been multiple times, but it's going to be fewer number of people, so it's going to be a smaller voice. So we need to make sure their voice is heard.
Are there some broader issues that you'd like that particularly interest you up there as far as what you've followed over the last 2 years at the Capitol?
Yeah, I think if I could get involved in the healthcare and the mental health challenge that we face, I do consider myself a proponent of environmental issues, and I think. In my last interview, I think if we can, I think one of the big issues is runoff in this area with the farming industry, and if we can ultimately help the farmers by developing fertilizers and weed killers that help and are not detrimental in the process. I think we're ahead. All of us are ahead.
I've heard IPERS discussed a lot, particularly in the last week or so. I don't know. I think it came up at a governor's debate last week, and now it's kind of become a big point of contention as far as the Democrats say that the next Republican administration would try and privatize IPERS, and the Republicans are saying, no, we don't want to do that. So I'm sure you've heard a fair amount about that issue as you've been talking to people. And what's your handle on that, and how do you feel about the state pension system?
Well, I've labeled it election year propaganda. It is a huge. IPERS is fantastic. It's an excellent program, and I can see why people are so defensive about it. And by invoking some doubt as to its status going forward, I think you can rally a lot of people. So it has become, like I said, election year propaganda. But, I've watched the video personally and offered to give the link to Governor Reynolds, saying, right from her mouth, not in text somewhere, but actually watch the words come out of her mouth, that she says we've made this promise to Iowans, and that's a promise we need to honor.
If the Republicans are able to hold on to the governor's office in at least one chamber of the legislature, are there some things that you would like to see, the caucus as a whole advance once they get back in 2019? Obviously, was the tax cut legislation a couple of years ago, some of the more social issues like abortion and the collective bargaining. Are there some things you would like to see them continue in 2019 or start anew?
I would really like to see not anything advanced, because I think by using that term advanced, it would be an agenda, a Republican agenda. I really think for the most part, Americans like their politics a little right center is what, and I totally agree with that, and I don't think we need to move too far right. We need to be mindful that there are other Iowans, and we all need to have some common ground. And I think advancing too far and advancing another agenda that would move us further to the right is not the right thing. I think we're probably in a pretty good state, and we don't need to advance too much more. We need to advance in healthcare. We need to advance, I think, with our school curriculum. But in order to advance an agenda that would be considered Republican and not bipartisan, I think is the wrong way to go.
Kind of on that point, you're running in a district that was represented by a Democrat for 10 years, and by the voter registration numbers tends to lean Democratic, but then voted for Trump in 2016. Mm-hmm. So it's, I think fairly you could consider it a mix. Leans Democrat, though, probably. How have you been pushing that message of bipartisanship? Do you feel like you've been coming across pretty, down the center, or what's been your pitch to voters in that aspect?
Let me start with, it's been 10 years that the current Jerry Kearns has been there, mm-hmm. but it was held by a Democrat for the previous 20 years. Mm-hmm. So it's been 30 years now. Mm-hmm. So what have I done to advance that? Well, first of all, I say it's time for a change. And I think everyone can agree with that. We don't like the way that Lee County has gone in the last little over a decade. So I think everybody agrees it's time for a change. And I certainly hear that tone from the people I speak with. But what have I done? For me, I say I can, I am running on a Republican Party. People, I think a lot of time look at that as a class issue. And I think that's ridiculous when you look at, and sad to see that people have that perception. When you look at the people who are involved in our campaign, it's not a cross-section of wealth that, and myself personally, people. I've had people that I've tried to share my information with, and they say I'm a working man, so I vote Democrat. And my message has been I'm a working man too. I work 2 jobs. I work swing shift down at Roquette in Keokuk, so I work nights and weekends and holidays, and I work. Yesterday and today was my day off, and I'm working both days, So I work 6 and 7 days a week. So I am a working man, and I work two jobs. So the other thing is I've been laid off. I've been downsized. I've been underpaid, I guess underemployed. So I really think that I have been through, not me looking through their lens, but I've actually lived a lot of the challenges that people in Lee County have experienced in the last few years.
Are there some specific initiatives then, or projects that you would like to work on that would help Lee County in particular, or kind of just the economy of Southeast Iowa more broadly? More broadly, I guess, Southeast Iowa, more broadly. There is, economic development is more than just bringing business in. It's raising the standard of living for raising the wages, raising the standard of living, raising the quality of living. So there's a lot more things to economic development than just bringing in a business to hire some people. There's a lot of things that go along with that. Right now, there are people who work in Southeast Iowa but live in other areas. They live 40 miles away. So shaping the experience, improving the quality of life in this area
is a part of it. And the other big thing is just letting, working, yes, in Des Moines, but being an ambassador for Lee County and making sure everybody knows that Lee County is open for business.
What are some of those quality of life things that you think would help? Does Lee County need more parks or more shopping or more, what do you think that is?
That's tough. The trend is for online shopping. I like to see these little boutiques and kind of special interest stores. I would love to see, some storefronts open back up. We have a lot of empty storefronts, both in Fort Madison and in Keokuk, and stores that I used to go to and have come back to visit, and they're closed. Had 3 businesses just recently closed down, and no successor, nobody willing to take the chance to take it over, and it's sad to see. And just one more empty storefront. Because we see what happens to those buildings. Mm-hmm. They go downhill. They're broken windows, peeling paint, just disrepair. So I hate to see those things. And like I said, I think money into the area, investment into the area. If we can get my big initiative has been to have children or young adults want to stay in the area. People like myself, I hear a lot of times that people that have moved back give people a reason to move back to the area and give people a reason to relocate to the area.
And on the small business piece, what do you think can be done at the state level to help small businesses grow? Is it, lower taxes, different incentives, or grant programs? How do you think that should work at the state level?
Yeah, at the state level, hard to say. A lot of, we've got an economic development chapter here in Fort Madison, down in Keokuk. They're doing some work. I was the president of economic development last year in Keokuk, and I said we have a lot of great people doing a lot of great things, and we all need to row together. So I think some coordination, having maybe some incentives available, that be a grant or some type of low interest loan, but getting all these entities to work together. I see a lot of individual effort by different committees, and it would be great to coordinate those things and have them working together. Right.
And as you've been out door knocking, what are some of the things that you've heard most from voters? What do you think are some of the issues driving them to the polls in a couple weeks?
Hard to say. A lot of it is health. I'm hearing a lot of IPers. I heard that yesterday. Talking about that and the fear of the union being degraded. Those things, healthcare.
Is there anything else you'd like to touch on? Anything that I didn't ask you about?
Oh yeah. Well, and I say there's been a lot of election year propaganda going on, and I think the thing that we need to remember is, first of all, like I said, I still do reserves, and I was on doing my active duty time, and was at Marine Forces Pacific, and that is in Hawaii, and ran into a guy, and a friend of mine, and we had this mutual friend, and he showed up, and he says, "Where are you from?" And I said, "I'm from Iowa." And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry." And my response to his was, "I'm not. We just got rated #1 by USA as the #1 place to live. So I'm not sorry at all." I think California was 50th. So we got to remember that there are a lot of good things going on in Iowa. You don't get that #1 rating. That wasn't a an asking at 1,000 Iowans of who they thought was number one place to live. This was a national poll. Mm-hmm. So we do have a lot of great things to be thankful for in Iowa, and a lot of good things going on. Number 3 in healthcare, number 5 in education, number 1 in infrastructure. Crime relatively low, quality of life in the top 10. So we have a lot of great things. Now, do you ever rest on those things? No. There's always room to improve. There's always things that can be focused on and improved upon. I am not a tax and spend guy, so I think that our tax cuts have been good. I think they've inspired the economy and inspired economic growth. And I would hate to see that after 2 years of progress, I would hate to see the Republicans lose the majority and go back to, and you've seen during the debates with the governor, Kim Reynolds, and her opponent, his initiative is to go back to raising taxes, a tax and spend economy. And that stifles growth and stifles economic development, and it runs business off. If they're going to be taxed to the point that they cannot maintain a proper profit margin, or that they fear for what may come with taxes, it scares them off. So we've had good growth. We've had, I think, a positive economy, and I think that's a good path to continue on. Even with education, we've got 75% of our budget going to health and human services and education. That's a very large chunk. Education is, in the top 5 for, from that study. And I think, again, we're on a good path. There's always room for improvement, and always things that can be improved upon. That's been one of my things, too, is the schools. We spend so much time on standardized tests. That's the measure of a school's success. Can the students pass their standardized test? And we're shaping our children, spend the majority of our curriculum to send everybody to a 4-year institution, which is not what everybody does. It's actually only a very small part of the population that does that. About just over 50% attend college, and just over 25% actually graduate. So putting everybody in the same mold to shape them to go to a 4-year institution is not the route to follow. And I think we need a paradigm shift in our measure and standards of measuring the success of our high schools, of our school curriculum, of our state curriculum.
You mentioned earlier about kind of the right of center, bipartisan, ideal that you'd like to take up to the Capitol. Do you think that that's realistic in our, kind of hyper partisan politics nowadays? And do you worry that if you got up there, you would be expected to vote the party line?
Excellent segue. Because with this campaign, the campaign finances are out for everybody, and I've taken absolutely zero PAC money, zero special interest money, and I am free of mind and free of ties to vote my feelings and my thoughts. I'm not tied to anybody. I haven't taken 70% of my money from any special interest for PAC, and not obligated to anyone for that. When I first started in this, he retired this year, but the former representative from 84,
Dave Heaton.
Dave Heaton, I met with him at one of the legislative luncheons, and great conversation. We had a few minutes one-on-one, and he said, if you're successful in this, remember who put you there. And they're the ones that voted for you, and they're the ones that are going to have to vote for you the next time. So remember who put you there. Remember the people of your district. I think, like I said, after 30 years of having the Democrats rule Lee County, and I think, as I said, it's time for a change. It's time to derail this machine. And we haven't had the money with our small budget, grassroots budget, coming from just the people of Lee County and some of my limited friends. We haven't had the budget to do polling. So our measure of success has been what they react to or what they have. And there's been 8 times the money spent to keep up with our message. And so we can't keep up with them on spending. We can't keep up with them on in this area, to advertise and to campaign. But I think we have a good message, and that's been obvious that we got them just where we want them. And I think, like I said, I think people in Lee County are ready for that change.